All right, let's do a quick review on the unit circle. We spent a whole week on it. At this point, it should come a little bit quickly to you. Maybe this is the brain thought that I'm hoping you are thinking, just the way you're thinking. If I ask you to find cosine of pi over 4, hopefully you draw the x and the y-axis. Maybe in your head, realize that pi over 4 is right here, so you draw in your little thing. Cosine is this distance, which you should know is radical 2 over 2. So that's the thought process that I want you to go through. Or like tangent of 180. So here's 180 degrees. So when it's on the axis, you have to use actual points like -1, 0. And then tangent is the y over the x, so the 0 over the -1, which is just 0. I don't know. At this point, they should come pretty quickly to you. Here's sine of 120. 120 degrees is right here. Sine is this distance, which is the long one, so radical 3 over 2. Something like that. And then maybe the last one we can do 5 pi over 6, so draw your little x and y, and then count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pi over 6, which is right here. The short one is a 1/2. The long leg is radical 3 over 2, but then that one's in the negative direction. And then tangent is always a tough one because it's always y over x. So it's like 1/2 over negative radical 3 over 2. Then you have to flip the fraction around, make it a -2 over radical 3. Cancel out the 2's. We have -1 over radical 3. And then we have to rationalize by multiplying the top and the bottom by radical 3. So this one was a lot of work. Final answer, negative radical 3 over 3. All right. So I kind of want you to be able to do these problems a lot quicker than we used to. Okay? Okay. Now let's focus on inverses, basically going backwards from what we have been doing. Before, they give you the angle, the degree, or the radian, and they ask for the side. Now they're going to give you the side, and then you have to go backwards and figure out what angle or what radian. Okay? But before we do them, let's take a look at these three. They all seem to be a little bit different, but they actually mean the same thing. This little -1, it just stands for inverse. This little word that says arc, it stands for inverse. And this one is also the same thing, except it's lowercase compared to this uppercase. And that they mean the same thing, but there's a slight difference to the capitalized and the lowercase. And I'll tell you in a little bit. All right, so basically all three of these are the same problem essentially. All right, to do them, what you have to do is look at radical 2 over 2. And then sine is usually the y, or the up and down segment. Where on the unit circle do you remember seeing a radical 2 over 2? It should be right there. Radical 2 over 2 is this one. for sine. Okay? And now they're asking, well, what degree was that was there that gave us a radical 2 over 2? And hopefully you remember that it's 45 degrees. If you wanted to do radians, it was pi over 4. But here's the thing is, you might be asking yourself, well, isn't square root of 2 over 2 also somewhere else on the unit circle? Yes, it was right over here as well. It was also square root of 2 over 2. Okay, so what angle did that correspond to? It was 135 degrees, or 3 pi over 4. All right, so these questions have more than one answer, and that's when we pay attention to the uppercase and the lowercase. The uppercase means they only want the one answer. The lowercase means they want both answers, or all of the answers. Okay, so that's what that means. Here's a little chart that lists the domain of where they want the answer. Whenever you're doing a sine problem, they want the answer that falls in here, not the answers that are here. Whenever you're doing a cosine problem, they want the answers here. And whenever you're doing the tangent problem, then you want whatever answers here. And then same thing for cosecant, secant, and cotangent. If they ask for all the answers, then you just find all the answers. But if they want for just one answer, then you use this chart to give the one answer that they want in this region only. All right, let's do a few more problems. Let's do arc sine of 1/2. This is capitalized, so we only want the one answer. So if you want to think of where sine is, that's 1/2. It's the short distance. Think about where you would see that, and it's actually right there. There's the 1/2 for sine, the opposite side, the up and down side. Okay, and what angle corresponds to that? 30 degrees, and that's our answer. 30 degrees. Here's another one. Oh. All right. Let's go ahead and do arc cosine of 1. Ooh. Now, 1 is different than the 1/2, the radical 3 over 2, or the radical 2 over 2. Remember when you had something like this, it was because your angle fell on one of those 4 points. You have to figure out which one it was. For cosine, it was the x value. So where do you see the x value equal to 1? It looks like it's right there, which was at 0 degrees. And that's our answer. 0 degrees. Let's try a couple in radians and see where we can get. Let's do arc cosine of negative radical 3 over 2. So radical 3 over 2 is usually the longer leg. Oops. The longer leg, but it's cosine, so it's the longer leg going from left to right. And we want a negative 1, so that would be, if you think about it, falls right here. The negative radical 3 over 2 falls right here. Okay, and then what radian was it right there? We can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pi over 6. So that's our answer, just 5 pi over 6. Let's do this one over here. Tangent. It's lowercase, so it actually wants all the answers. All right, we can do that. But now you have to remember, tangent was the y value over the x value. So we needed this combo to simplify to a radical 3. That one's a little tricky. You have to remember that this combo, when you simplify it, gets you radical 3. A fraction over a fraction. All right, so that just means that the y value is radical 3 over 2, and the x value is 1/2. Now, where do you see the y value, radical 3 over 2, and the x value, 1/2? Okay, take a moment to think about it. It's actually right here. The short side, the cosine side, is 1/2, and then the sine side, the y value, is radical 3 over 2. And what radian falls there? It's 2 pi over 6, which is the same thing as pi over radical 3. But this problem is a lowercase, which means it wants all the answers, or 2 answers. So this combination happens somewhere else. And it actually happens with the negative on top and the negative on bottom. Where is that? It's actually right here, with the negative 1/2 here, and a negative radical 3 over 2. So we actually have the second answer, which is right there. 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, 4 pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 6 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, and finally 8 pi over 6, which reduces down to 4 pi over 3. That's our second answer. All right, so those are kind of tricky. It's the first day to do inverses, the first day to go backwards from our unit circle. So try the homework and we'll continue practicing these a lot more. Thank you.